Hey YouTube, what's up? Sam here with Too Many Hobbies. Today we're going to be taking our old trim here to our new trim there. And hopefully we're not going to be using one of these, and we're not going to be using one of these. So first, before we get into all that, let's talk about why we're going to put new trim over top of old trim. For me, it came down to the inability to take this trim off. Underneath this LVP is a pine floor, and that pine floor was put over a laminate floor. So when they initially put down this trim, then they put this wood floor over top of the old floor, and so now where these nails are down in the bottom is below that pine board. So I can't pull that stuff out without tearing out all this and then tearing it apart, and it's going to be a huge mess. So I could just put a quarter round or something right along here. I don't like that look. I wanted a taller trim that's a more modern trim, because now that I've got this LVP over top of the pine floor, which yes, my manufacturer said that I could do that before we get into all that. So double check with your flooring that you're using. But because of that, we've lost on this trim here, we've lost almost 3/4 of an inch of height. Now this trim is only about 2 1/4 inches tall to begin with, and our new stuff is 5 1/4. So how are we going to do this without tearing this stuff off? Well, there is a product out there that you can buy that Lowe's sells, and it's $40 a board, and it comes in about 3 different selections, and that's $40 for an 8-foot board. So just to do this room that we're standing in, that's roughly 12 by 12, is going to be quite a bit of money. So I'll show you the final figures on everything at the end. What I did is, here's a scrap piece of our trim. And this is just an MDF. This is 5 1/4. Okay, Lowe's sells this in a contractor pack of 5 boards. 5 12-foot boards, and it's like $60. I'm going to put the link in the description. So what I did is I took this other MDF board and I put it behind it. Now my trim here, I don't have a piece of this, so we're going to use this scrap piece of wood here to demonstrate. So right now, if I just put this up against here, here's our trim that's on there already, and then I put this up against. Now you have all this wall space here that you can't put anything up against. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a piece of MDF and we're going to put it up here like this to match that. Now, when you nail it in, it has something else to grab to. So, let's get our stuff together and get into it. Okay, so we're going to start off in this corner. This piece here has already been cut. Now, what's going to be different about this than regular trimming is that these small pieces here are going to have to go all the way back into the corner, okay? But this other trim piece here is not going to go all the way over, because your floor trim that's already there is going to stop it right here. So you have to take into account that these pieces here are going to go back in, okay? Now if you have small gaps, like right here that you see, all you're going to do is just fill that in with caulking. Okay, this is all white. Most of the time, you're going to run caulking down the top of this anyway, fill in any gaps to where your walls aren't going to be perfect. You're going to have that stuff going in and out. So it's not a big deal on that. So we're going to get this set up, get it cut, and then we're going to bring it back in. So with this kind of trim, what we're going to do is we're going to have 2 different measurements here. We're going to have our measurement that goes into the back corner of this trim, where this piece is going to go beyond, okay? See right now, this trim goes like this. So it goes beyond that. So we're going to have that measurement go from there, and this will be an easy cut here, to just this flat surface here. Okay, then what I like to do is I like to come in and then I'll cut my trim piece here, and I'll make it a little long, and then we'll do our miter, or our coping cut here, and we'll do that first. because that's going to be the more difficult cut. This end down here is just going to be a straight cut. So get your coping cut done first, and then you can always trim off of the straight side. That's going to be an easy cut. So make it a little long. All right, so we're going to measure this stuff out, and then we'll get back to it. All right, so here we are in the garage. We're going to set up to do our coping cut. So what is a coping cut? So you see here how this is cut out to where it will fit around. If I can get a hold of a board, it'll fit around that to go in that corner. Okay, you could also do 45s where you cut two pieces like that and then they would go together and it would hide it. So, but we're going to do a coping cut on it. I think it's a cleaner look. So what I've done is I have a scrap piece of wood here. Okay, and it's got coping cuts on both sides of it. Okay, so then this is our good piece here that's going to go against that wall. Okay, so it's already been measured and cut. And then all I did was I clamped a piece of wood against this to where I can push this board tight against it and I can hold this tight against it, and you're going to get the bottom flush. And then you're going to take your sharp pencil, and then all you're going to do is draw your line out. And the reason for using this scrap piece of wood to cope it is because it will allow this cut here to go down against that other board to where you get a good line. If it was just like this here and then against it, then over in this area here, you're not going to get a good line because it's up off of that, because that piece, as you can see, it tapers down. So as you're drawing that line across, you're kind of just hovering on whatever you can. So take you a scrap piece, cut out both sides on it, and then that is going to give you a nice good line down it. You can see it. So let's cut it and we'll go from there. So we're going to use our coping saw here to cut this groove out here. So because this is MDF, on the edge here, you want to be really careful with that because it's going to want to tear. So start off by just going slow until you get bit into it a little bit. And then once you're into it, then you can speed up your saw. You also want to try and keep your saw vertical, perfectly vertical down through here, okay? So let's change this angle so you can maybe see a little bit more. I have my material clamped down so that it's not moving around on me. You can just hold it down if you want. And again, this has already been cut here with just a miter saw all the way up until where this edge starts here. Alright, so we've test fit this already. Now, you got a couple different options on what to do here. So you have your thin piece of board here that's going to go on top. And when you're buying this one right here is 3/8 of an inch. My trim board here is 7/16. I'm a 1/16 of an inch off. So you might see a little bit of that on your ends where you have an outside corner 45 and you might have to trim those out just a touch. But it's nothing too hard. So if you can find a piece of this that's going to closely match whatever the thickness of your trim is down here, you're going to be better off. You also have the option of, if you had a table saw, you could rip down a 2x4 or something like that into strips to give you this. But this is easier and faster, and it's really not that expensive. One of these boards, 7 foot long, is, I think, was $4. I'll put the link down below. So you have the option of either going down first and nailing this to the wall with using a scrap piece to get your height. But it seems to me like this stuff wants to just be a little bit wavy and then you get unevenness. So on a short board like this, what you can actually do is we're just going to go down through with some super glue and we're just going to do a couple little spots just to hold everything in place. So on this one here, this is easy because I know that these boards are going to line up flush on this end. So I'm just going to run down through and just put just enough to hold this stuff together. Now this board here, if you can see it, one end is rounded and the other one is more square. You want that more square end up at the top so you don't have a gap showing. So then we're going to go down through and we're going to hold this flush on the end. Until it sets. Let's go get this up against the wall. So that's against our wall here. Now, we need to measure out where our studs are going to be. So typically, this outlet is going to have a stud either on this side or on this side. So, I don't really like these cheapy stud finders, but we can see if this thing's going to work. Okay, so it's telling us our studs on this side. So without having to mess with any of this stuff, these boards are pre-painted. I painted them before I cut them and put them up. So that way all I have to do is I just have to go down through, touch up my one spots where I hammer or use a nail to go in, and then repaint just those little spots instead of doing that whole thing. And then that makes it a lot easier so you don't have paint on your floor or anything else like that. So take your measuring tape, set it out here. So right here's where our stud is. So line this up here. Okay, so here's our stud. And because you have this other board back here, that'll actually help you as well to nail in. So if I wanted to put another one up here, but it's got it pretty tight down through. So 16 inches off of this. Most of the time your framing is going to be 16 inches on center. So there's our stud. And then here's our next one. Then I don't have a full 16 inches down off of that. So the framing, there should be a stud running right here, so I'm going to try and get as far over as I can. There also would be a 2x4 or 2x whatever, 2x6, 2x4 typically, running on the bottom where all your studs come down and tie in on the bottom. So if you get lower down here, then you also hit a stud. So we're going to run 2 more in, trying to get into this corner here, and then that's going to be good for nailing this in. So here's an outside corner where these two pieces come together. This has already been done, and we're going to show you, this is a wax pin. Okay, because I use 18 gauge brad nails, they're really, really small holes. All you need to do is take something like this. You might not even be able to see it on the camera. Got a little hole here. All we're going to do is just fill that spot in. Here's another one. Nails below the surface there. Fill that spot in. Okay. These are already pre-painted. Again, so all I have to do is just go over it with this and these spots where I nailed it. Put that on and then come back over and touch these spots up with a little bit of paint. All right, so here's a picture of this rapid fit that I was talking about, and it is no longer listed for sale at Lowe's. You might be able to find it online if you end up deciding to go that route, but I bought all my stuff for my project a couple months ago, and it was available then for $40 a board, and it was only 8-foot boards. We'll get into more of that here in a second. So that's this stuff here, and so I basically kind of use that as design. You can see up at the top where it holds the material away from the wall in order to be able to line it up flush with the trim you previously had. And then in the next screen here, you can see to the far left, that one that's $60 and some change, that's what we used here in the video. So that is a five piece set there in that contractor pack. So you get 5 12-foot boards for $60. I don't think you can beat that price anywhere else. Now, if you don't want to do MDF, I'm not sure if they have prime pine boards, but you could still do the same thing with that. And then the next screen here is the board that we used as a filler board to put back behind our actual trim. Now this is going to vary differently. This board that is on the screen is a 3/8 inch thick board. So most trim is a 1/2 inch. So you might have to end up finding a 1/2 inch. For whatever reason, the trim that was in my house was 7/16. And so the closest thing I could find was this 3/8 inch stuff. So you shouldn't have any issue running down, except for when you get into your outside corners, and you might have to use a little bit of a shim or a trim or something there to bring that out to where it's all flush, or else the bottom of your 45s might be off slightly. All right, so let's break this down. So the left is going to be the rapid trim design, and then on the right is going to be what we did today. So some pros and cons of the rapid fit. Obviously now it's not even available at Lowe's. Before it was $40, and it's only in 8-foot long boards. They only had 3 or 4 different options as far as designs that you could look at, and then again, it just being an 8-foot length. So this room that I did was roughly 12 by 12, so that means that you're going to have a lot of cuts in the middle there, and you're going to be jointing that stuff together, and it's not going to look as clean. Even the guys that are really good at that stuff, it's not going to look as good as just having one continuous run. So $40 per 8-foot board, that's $5 per foot. So in your 12 by 12 room that we did today, for example, that's going to be $240 just in that trim. Okay, then compare that to the stuff that we did today. The big thing is going to be finding that filler board that's going to match in the back. And obviously this is going to take a little bit longer because we're putting 2 pieces of trim in there. So prices for everything that we had today were listed here. $60 per 5 pack of the 12-foot boards, and then $6 per 7-foot filler board. So then that breaks it down to where you can look at the math there, $1.86 per foot. So in that 12 by 12 room today that we did, I only had $89.28. So you're talking a big difference there, especially if you're doing an entire house. And I did the entire downstairs floor of my house. So you start talking about 1,400 square feet, you're talking a few $1,000s in savings doing it this way. And again, the reason that I did it is because I couldn't tear that old trim off. So if you're not wanting to mess with doing all the demo of that, or you're in the same situation as I am where you have an old floor that was put down afterwards and you can't get that stuff out, then look into this. Hopefully this video is helpful for you. As always, remember to like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.